is on procurement, contracting, and grant opportunities. Obviously, this is all about where the money is, and that's a key portion of this as well. We have a wonderful panel here, which is being moderated by Marsh Hurd from the EDC in Space, Florida, and we look forward to another wonderful discussion. Take it away, Marsh.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good morning. Welcome to the panel. We're delighted to have you here. Hopefully we can say a few things today about procurement, contracting, and grants, particularly as it applies to small business and to renewable energy. I want to take you back a little bit in time to 1947. In the summer of 1947, a gentleman by the name of Stanley Baldwin passed away in England. And Mr. Baldwin's claim to fame is he'd been Prime Minister of England on 3 separate occasions for about 2 years at a time. The only difficulty is that he tried to avoid World War II by appeasing the Germans, and there were another factor of people that didn't think they could ever appease the Germans satisfactorily. So he wasn't the most popular of people. Nonetheless, when an ex-prime minister passes away, you sort of expect somebody to pay homage to him. Mr. Churchill at the time, in July of 1947, was on a ship in the South Atlantic off the coast of South America, and his staff found out about the death of Stanley, and they thought, certainly he will want to go back immediately for the funeral. And in 1947, and I remember 1947 better than I remember yesterday, you didn't travel casually. I mean, you were talking about twin-engine airplanes. The Super Constellation hadn't come into being yet. So if you traveled across country, you were looking at a full day's trip. If you traveled from South America back to England, you were looking at a really arduous trip. So his staff immediately went to see how they could divert the ship, how they could fly a seaplane out to pick up Mr. Churchill, how they could get him to the mainland, how they could get him on an RAF airplane, how soon could they get him back to London. So they did all that staff work before they went in to see him, and they explained the situation to him, and they said, "What are your instructions?" And he said, "Embalm, cremate, bury, leave nothing to chance." Well, that's what we're going to do this morning, except we're not going to be quite that rigid. We're going to be considerably more forgiving. We really encourage your participation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say about 30 seconds on each of our 5 panelists, and then we're going to turn it over to them in turn, and you'll see their bio. I want them to say a little bit about where they're from, their parent organization, what their interests are, and we'll just go down the road and do that, and then we'll come back and take questions from the audience. So let me start with Vince Lopresti, if I can find the right piece of paper. He brings a wealth of private capital financing and business development to the SBA. He has recently rejoined the SBA in 2009. He's now the area regional manager for the SBA, centered around Fort Pierce. By education and experience, he is a card-carrying banker. Next to him is Tony Espinoza. Tony is with the Orlando Small Business Center at UCF. He was the Regional Certified Business Analyst of the Year in 2009. He's been instrumental in helping our state small businesses garner more than $36 million in federal contracts in the past 2 years. By education and work experience, he is a procurement and acquisition expert. Now we're out of order, so I'll have to fake this a little bit. Dudley Cannon is Director of Procurement at the Kennedy Space Center. Dudley's law degree and his Department of Defense procurement experience have served him well in his current assignment. This is really a busy year for the Kennedy Space Center. They have a number of major new acquisitions underway. You've got to be up to your gunnels. We have seen a transformation. In the past, many of the contracts were let by the Johnson Space Flight Center and executed here. We've now had a break with tradition, and we now have 2 major contracting efforts that will be the responsibility of the Kennedy Space Center. Those contracts will be administered from here and run from here. One thing I should tell you about Dudley is in the process of doing this, he's managed to place more than 20% of all NASA contracts with small business over the years, and he continues to do that. Jack Hinkle is with the UCF Venture Lab. Jack's a graduate of UCF for both his bachelor's degree and his master's degrees in finance and marketing. He stayed on when he got out of the graduate school as the business development manager for the laboratory, and now he's the interim assistant director for the lab. Jeanette Peters is a self-described recovering attorney. She serves as a certified grant specialist and president of the nonprofit management consulting company in Gainesville, where she focuses on helping faith-based and community-based nonprofits receive grant monies. She too has been successful, having received more than $20 million to date for her clients. And I have to tell you, in today's economic environment, that has to be one breathtaking challenge. Please join me in welcoming our panel. We'll hear first from Vince, and then we'll just go right down the table.
Thank you very much.
Yes, your PowerPoint's here. My clicker's here. Oh, actually, no.
Oh, okay. I don't have my PowerPoint anymore. I'll just do a dog and pony dance. That'll be fine. Okay, Small Business Administration, in case you don't know it, what we do is we facilitate, be it for loans, be it for helping you connect yourself up to the right resource partner, and also in the avenue of procurement. The SBA helps with the getting you federal contracts. Last year, the federal government, and on average for the last 3 years, the federal government has done $500 million a year in services for goods or services. And our resource partners and the other federal agencies are tasked with providing approximately 23% of all of their contracts to small businesses. So that comes out to a little bit more than $100 million a year in government contracting. So has anybody here done government contracting in one form or the other? Okay, we have a couple people that have had experience doing that. Okay, as I said, we facilitate government contracting. You can, as a contractor, you can either self-certify yourself, or if you want to become a hub zone contractor or an 8A, we have certification processes for that. One of the best ways to get a feel of what's available for the federal government and what's actually on the government website for contracting is to go to a website called FederalBizOpps.gov, which is FBO.gov, and on that you can take a look as to what's available for contracting. There are approximately 18,000 contracts out there nationwide to do contracting. For the state of Florida, over the last 90 days, there are currently a little bit more than 400 contracts out there. So you may be, you may be an architect, you may be doing something for plant management, leasing out facilities. Maybe you're a baker and you're looking to do maybe a contract with the federal prisons. So there are contract opportunities out there. We also can help you by looking at some of the other websites, which I don't have my slides up here, so I can't show them to you. But the main one is SBA.gov. You take a look at that, and you can do some click-down boxes, and it will talk to you about contracting. We've also set up a new website called SBA.gov/GC contracting. And on that, that will give you 3 or 4 webinars about how to contract with the federal government. Take a look at that information, see how it helps you, and if you have any questions, we have people to talk to. You can talk to at the district office. I have a business card you can use to go and talk to us on that. We also have resource partners. Tony, who will talk to you in a couple minutes, is one of our best resource partners in the area. They provide one-on-one training, or they provide group training on how to do contracting with the federal government. I also have one thing to talk about too, is before you do contracting with the federal government, you have to register. And that registration is on a website called CCR.gov. So take a look at that website, try to get familiar with it. To contract, I'm going to leave you with 5 winning tips for contracting, what you should try to learn and do in order to contract with the government. The first one is to get a counselor. Find somebody from the Small Business Development Center to help you, somebody from SCORE. You have a Women's Business Center here. They can help you with government contracting. You can talk to Tony. They will help you get in the contracting game. They'll help you understand the contract, help you understand the contracting and how to do that on the federal level. Get certified. As I talked about, you can become 8A certified, or you can self-certify yourself as a woman-owned small business, a veteran-owned small business, or as a small business in and by itself. Get certified, find out what's available for you. Become targeted. The most successful contractors have a specific product or service that the federal agencies need. You may have a service, say, architect. You may have a service doing something for Department of Homeland Security that they want to see, or you may have something in manufacturing that the federal government's looking for. So make sure you're certified in that. Make sure you get yourself down correctly when you identify your industry code for that. Market your business. Make sure you market your business. Find out which government agencies in the area, like the GSA or NASA, are doing government contracts or holding matchmaking events. Go to those matchmaking events. Make yourself known to the contracting officers at all these agencies, be it the GSA, the NASA. Also, we have a contract specialist down in Miami. Make sure you get known by him as to what's available. They have one up in the Jacksonville district office too. You can get talk to them. And identify contracting opportunities. Be proactive. Find out what bids you want to bid on, and get it done right. Talk to somebody in contracting, somebody who's done it before. Maybe find a mentor that's been pretty active in doing government contracting that can help you do that. Sometimes you may have a contract that's going to be too big for you to do yourself. Do a joint mentorship with somebody that's bigger, doing it as a subcontractor, and get experience doing that. Those are the ways that the federal government can help you with contracting. It's not as convoluted as you think it is. After you get a couple of them under your belt, it gets to be a little bit easier. Currently in South Florida, we have a little bit more than 400 8A firms. So if you've been in business for a couple of years and you're interested in becoming 8A certified, if you're eligible for that, apply online to become 8A certified. It has all the information on there. If you have some questions on that, talk to somebody in my staff in contracting or in 8A department, or even talk to Tony. With that, Tony.
Good afternoon. My bio will tell you a little bit about me, what I've done briefly. I work for a program called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. It is a nationwide program. Here in Florida, it is a specialized program under the Small Business Development Center. So what do we do? Our program was established to assist businesses with understanding how to sell to the government, and that's federal, state, and local, every aspect of selling to the government. Now, while everybody sees us as experts, we don't have all the answers and we don't know everything. If I did, I'd be fishing somewhere right now on my yacht. But we have a lot of resources at our fingertips to help you. We provide counseling. We provide one-on-one counseling. I do things a little bit different than most of the other PTACs throughout the nation and throughout the state. We offer seminars on government contracting. We are currently doing a series of 4 classes here in Brevard County, which I do 2 series every year, and we do a couple series in Orlando. We also periodically do other workshops on different topics. The other services and assistance that we help are in the form of providing you guidance with preparing your proposals. The biggest problem that procurement people see with proposals is that small businesses don't provide what they're asking for. You know, you see the topic of the proposal, all of a sudden, yeah, I know how to do that. I'll tell them how I'm going to do that. But you know what? Most people, or a lot of people, don't even read the proposal to see what the government's asking for. If you don't do that, don't waste your time, because the proposal is going to go on the side. Very important that you read that proposal, as daunting as it may seem. Take your no-dose, drink a pot of coffee, because it is very boring, very time-consuming subject. But if you want to do business with the government, actually, if you want to do business with anybody, and you're going to enter into large contracts, you better read that contract and understand what's on there. Because if not, you're not going to get a contract. And the simplest thing is to follow the instructions. I've seen so many proposals that, you know, right off the bat, I can take a look at them and say, this person didn't even read the instructions. And it can be very minor things. The size font, the margins on your page, the number of pages. Don't blab on about how great you are, how great your product is. You want to say, you know, some of how great the product is, but you want to tell the government how you're going to fulfill their needs. And that's what they're asking you to do. If you blab on the first 5 pages of your proposal, they're only asking you for 5. The next 5 pages is going to tell them exactly how you're going to do that. Guess what? They're only going to read the first 5. So they don't know how you're going to do that. Vince talked about certifications, and he mentioned some that you may say, well, what the heck is that? Well, I will help you understand what those are and talk to you about what those certifications are, talk to you about the requirements, eligibility requirements for those, and help you along the process with those as well. We can review those small business program applications for you, make sure you're dotting your I's, crossing your T's. We can review proposals for you. However, when it comes to reviewing a proposal, it's very important that you give us enough time to review it. And it's very important that you give us what the proposal is, what the government's asking for, and your response. I've had clients just give me a response. Well, there's no way I can review that because I don't know what the government's asking for. So think about what you're doing. Think about how you're going to respond to those proposals as well. Now, I want to talk about the Small Business Development Center a little bit also, because the Small Business Development Center is there to help you with any aspect of running your business. Right now, our Small Business Development Center at UCF is focusing on second stage companies, more established companies, to help you grow. So we have programs there that you can take advantage of that will help you grow. We have regional satellite centers, and Brevard Community College is a center. Volusia County, we have a center up there. We have a center in Kissimmee, in Leesburg. So we cover 8-county area in the East Central Florida region. One of the previous panelists talked about the UCF incubator, and they showed a picture up there of the UCF incubator at Daytona State College. In Daytona Beach. We just opened a PTAC office in Daytona Beach, and he's actually inside of that incubator. He has an office up there to help cover the area because prior to that, I was a one-man show. Most of all the PTACs nationwide, they're one-man shows, and we can get extremely busy at any given time throughout the year, and it may take sometimes a little bit for someone to get back to you. I will get back to you, so I'm going to apologize to you now. Please be patient with me. I want to help you. I'm excited about helping you, talking about the different companies out there, different opportunities that are out there. FBO is just one area that you can go to look for opportunities. There are a lot of areas that you can go to look for opportunities. So if you're interested, I have business cards, I have brochures. I'll leave the brochures out in front on the table before I leave. Please give me a call. Let me know that you're interested in doing business or doing more business with the government, and we can sit down and talk about it and just use this as a tool in your entrepreneurial toolbox to do more business with the government. Thank you.
Good morning. I've got some slides. Do you have those? Okay. Before I jump into them, and I'm just going to do these at a fairly high level. Will these be available to the attendees at a later date? Yes, they will. Okay, so what I wanted to make sure was include some reference information, some contact information within those slides, so you can look into them at your leisure after this event. First, I wanted to give you a lay of the land at Kennedy Space Center. My office or director is responsible for the acquisition, administration of all KSE contracts. We literally have hundreds of contracts. We also administer, as Marshall mentioned, the JSE contract, the ground operations piece for the shuttle processing contract, which is in the process of transitioning. One of the things that Kennedy is doing, and the center director is leading us, is a major transformation out of the center. We're transforming from a largely one program-centric support that was largely funded by shuttle program, directed to shuttle program. As shuttle is winding down, its flight's complete. They're going through the transition and retirement process of all the assets and the closeout of the contract. But as it's winding down, we're shifting over to a more of a capability-based center that's available for multiple programs. We have additional programs that have been recently assigned to Kennedy. One that's been there for quite a while that seems to pale in the light is the Launch Services Program. That's the ELV launches that you see, highly visible, a lot of science mission, planetary missions. In addition to that, the ones that have signed recently, previously referred to as 21st Century Space Launch Complex, recently they changed their name to Ground Systems Development and Operations. Major redevelopment of the center involved in that, looking at both the new NASA vehicles, but also looking at a capability for commercial space and a capability that may be available for commercial technology development that may relate to space or parallel with space, but may not actually launch rockets. Let's see, and then the other one that currently it keeps wavering back and forth between contracts and space act agreements. Is a commercial crew development program. We're moving in the direction of a contract on that one, so transition back based on the budget we got for 2012 and what's projected for 2013. They're doing funded space acts. But the work involved is largely similar to their contract as far as the development activities. And we're trying to get as much of that at the center as we can. Part of that also is looking at making facilities available. You probably saw the press release earlier this year where Boeing is occupying what used to be an orbiter processing facility for their commercial crew capsule that they're in the process of developing. So if I can jump on to the, going past the agenda, I wanted to give you the lay of the land as far as the major support contracts. Like I said, literally we've got hundreds, but these are our major support contracts, and I'm showing you this for two reasons. One, this provides sort of an insight into what capabilities available out there that you may be able to tap into under Work for Others, which I'll address in a minute, or through a Space Act agreement, some kind of reimbursable Space Act agreement with NASA. But also, this provides you an opportunity to potentially get subcontract arrangements, vendor arrangements with these major contractors out there. We've got a highly skilled workforce, many of which we've laid off, or not we, but the contractors have laid off approximately 8,000 employees out there. A lot of these are highly trained, highly capable employees. We still have in the 7,500 range out there. It's unique assets. We're offering up facilities. In some cases, we may have some excess capacity as we hit certain valleys that these companies may be able to do work for external companies and help them meet unique requirements. And it's a very collaborative environment. Kennedy Space Center, for a lot of people don't know, since we're not a research and development center, but within the agency, we're only second to Jet Propulsion Laboratory out in Pasadena in the number of patents that have granted to NASA. So a lot of development, a lot of it's at a higher TRL, a lot of applied research and development activities. So these are self-explanatory. I won't go through and read them to you. You can do that at your leisure. But if we jump to the next slide, Work for Others is a phrase that we sort of coined there that really refers to the ability of our contractors to do work and use government facilities for work outside the contract. There's certain restrictions that apply to that. We've tried to pull these various pieces, criteria together into one place, and we call that the Work for Others clause. We've got this clause in all those contracts you saw on the last slide. One of the requirements that we've got on that some people fail to recognize, but it's very critical. The federal government's not out there to compete with private industry. So one of the requirements is that there be a unique capability out there before we can really allow government facilities to be used. We don't want to. We want to help promote commercial business in the private sector. We don't want to be an obstacle to them. But by the same token, there is certain unique capabilities out there. So if there's something that's only available out there, or something, whether it's capacity, technology, clean room, something like that, we're there. One of the things we're doing is, once we get this in place, is it's expedited process. We're still going through some learning pains and trying to develop a sort of a pricing catalog so we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel each time. Once we identify certain pricing as to what needs to be credited back to the government for use of facilities, then it should be fairly streamlined and the repeat business much easier to accomplish. The work for others is a situation where you go directly to a contractor to get something done. In addition to that, there's the opportunity for, as I mentioned, the Reimbursable Space Act agreements where you either want a facility, in some cases maybe a facility or a use without contractor labor. In some cases you may want to tap into the civil service capability. Points of contact I've got reflected on there. If you're going straight to a contractor, only using their labor and the government assets, you can go direct to them. If you're doing something that involves the civil servants or something much broader, we've got our Center Planning and Development Office. Jay Edelman was there. Robert Hubbard sitting up there. That's the front door for those activities. So feel free to contact them. We recognize the capability that we've got here that will both enable us to maintain the capability that we need, that we might not otherwise be able to fund by sharing the assets and avoiding cost, but also the benefit to individuals. If we jump to the next slide, like I said, unique capabilities. I won't read these. Just wanted to include this information for your later use and recognizing certain restrictions and stuff. Okay, getting on to contracting. I don't expect you to read this. I purposely made it fuzzy so you couldn't read it. But the key thing on this slide is each year all the centers go out and publish an annual acquisition forecast. This is looking for FY12. It's based on a fiscal year. The important thing in this slide is that link you see there. If you go to that link, click on our current acquisition forecast, that not only shows you what we're doing now, what shows up on the FedBizOpps or the NASA acquisition information system, it shows you what we expect to get to later in the year. That way it allows you to do advanced planning and prepare. Jumping to the next slide is the sort of our entry into FedBizOpps. And up there at the top is you see the website that gets into the current acquisition activity that's going on at Kennedy Space Center. You actually can tap into this for across the agency. You can click it by center, you can click it by date. You can go in and you can register based on particular NAICS codes, areas that you're interested in, to try to get it to contact you when something gets posted in that area. It's really key, and both the prior speakers mentioned that when you do get this, that you read the solicitation carefully. You read to see what the solicitation is requesting that you provide it. Typically, in our larger procurements, we've got within the sections of the RFP, we've got one instructing you on what to include in your proposal. We've got one telling you how we'll evaluate it. So that really gives you some key information on how to work it. In addition, what we do on this FedBizOpps or NACE is we go out with source of salt. It is really key when we go out with the source of salt, and if it's something that you're interested in, that you reply. If we're going out looking for small business capability in an area and we ask for capability statements, we're not asking for just your glossy brochure to come in and say, okay, this is my company. You know, we want you to address those specific things in there because that affects our decision of whether or not we can set aside that procurement for small business. It also affects our decision if we can't set it aside for small business on what goals we're going to set within that procurement, that whatever company that wins it will have to go to small business with subcontracts. So it's key that you respond. I've gone to several small business conferences. The people complain that we don't know about something or they go and set it aside. We ask them if they responded to these synopses and they go, no. So you need to help us and we'll help you. Several major acquisitions ongoing, and I'm sorry to say the first three I really can't talk about because they're currently under blackout. Two of them are under evaluation phase and one of them is under the proposal phase. But for the task, which is our new aerospace operations contract, I've included the website and the commercial crew. So if you're interested in any aspect of that or think you may have some subcontracting opportunity or something down the road, you can click on those or go to those links and they'll identify you. Another one that we're currently in the acquisition planning phase is a new central campus phase 1, which is a new headquarters building. Jay Edelman on the prior panel had mentioned our Platinum facility that we've got out there, where our Propellants North. It was the first zero carbon footprint in the agency for a facility. And recently, along with the Platinum facilities at several other centers, just got some White House recognition for green government. Several opportunities here. As was mentioned, the government is mandated that we do certain amount of renewable and green energy, reused materials. So this is something you may want to keep an eye on. Okay, next slide. These just some ongoing activities. NASA Launch Services, certain opportunities out there. Multiple award IDIQ construction. We're delaying the recompete of that one slightly based on a more recent look at requirements. But we do have some existing ones, and there are subcontracting opportunities there as well. I did want to mention the opportunities, particularly in the research area, and I think the next speaker is going to be talking about it as well. NASA typically goes out with an annual call for small business innovative research proposals. That's a peer selection process and opportunities if you are a small business and doing innovative research to have the opportunity. I'll just touch on this next one, and before Marshall gives me the hook here, the CHOW is a really valuable resource. In addition to the resources available with SBA, Larry Third, my small business specialist, runs the CHOW, and we've got it set up where it provides opportunities for small businesses to come in and get counseling, get information to what's going on. One of the key things that the KSC was first in the agency doing is the joint counseling you'll see there. And the joint counseling is where it's not only the government briefing you on upcoming requirements and how to do business with the government, it's our major prime contractors, both large and small, coming in advising you of the opportunities within their own contracts. So while we may have a prime contract that goes on for several years, they from time to time may be out there recompeting their subcontracts, and you have the opportunity. Business Opportunities Expo, we just set the date for that in October. I believe it's I can't recall what the date is, but watch for that one. That's out of the port. We have typically about 175 companies represented in booths. Not only may it help you get information in contracting, possibly a subcontract, we've got a lot of successes out there with business-to-business relationships that have developed as a result of that. And then we also do Industry Day. We're in the process of planning our spring Industry Day, and that's where we bring companies in certain target areas to brief us and our contractors and capabilities. Websites there for the CHOW. I'd suggest that you really go and look at that. Final thing I was asked to address was unsolicited proposals. That's something that I think is largely misunderstood. We get a lot of things that are called unsolicited proposals that are either trying to respond to an upcoming RFP, or in some cases responding to certain known requirements. Really what we're looking at there is something innovative, something where you're coming to tell us about something that we didn't know we had a requirement for, but it's a better mousetrap, new innovative activities. And then in closing, I also want to mention that I think you've got a speaker in one of the breakout sessions talking about tech transfer, so opportunities within NASA. We've got a lot of government technology that we'd like to put out there that can be commercialized and benefit the private sector. So there was a speaker, just to give an advertisement for one of the later sessions that you may want to go and listen to, as far as the ability to tap into government technology that's available for you to take and use to commercialize and privatize. With that, I'll turn it over to Jack.
Thank you. My name is Jack Henkel. I work for the UCF Venture Lab, and we are an economic development agency focused on helping early-stage technology companies in Central Florida. We're funded by the Orange County government, High Tech Corridor Council, and UCF. So we work a lot with faculty trying to spin technologies out of the university, with community entrepreneurs, the UCF Incubator, and really anybody in that Central Florida area, the 13 counties, is really our sweet spot. As part of what we do, we help with business coaching. That includes a lot of customized market research for companies, helping write business plans, go after funding, whether that's venture capital, angel investment, and even SBIR's Small Business Innovation and Research Grants, which is what I'm talking about today. We're very good at helping companies figure out how they fit in the SBIR program and really how to approach those grants. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the mission, excuse me, of the SBIR program is to promote technology innovation and economic growth through the investment of federal research funds in the small businesses. A key component of SBIR grants is the commercialization component. It's not just a grant for research and development. It's judged on the technology innovation that's revolutionary, not just evolutionary, and also the commercialization plan. If you have a 20-page SBIR application, 4 to 5 pages will be a commercialization plan, basically a shortened business plan. They want to know that as a small business, you know how to take this technology to market and you know how to commercialize it. It's not just research to do research and to invent and create something. Next slide, please. Basically, the SBIR and STTR program, and I'm going to talk about those as one program here for a couple slides, and I'll tell you what the difference is once we get through some of the high-level details. But basically, it's a 3-phase program, and it's funded by 11 different federal agencies. They all have to give a portion of their extramural research and development budget to SBIR grants. Each agency issues a solicitation once or a couple times a year, depending on the agency. And each agency is very different in the requirements and what they look for and the types of solicitations they put out. But basically, you have to be a small business to apply, so you can't apply as a research institution that's nonprofit or as a university. You have to have a small business to go after SBIRs. And as you can see, the Department of Defense is a large portion of the SBIR program. About 50% of the total awards come from the Department of Defense. They put out multiple solicitations a year. They're the most active participant in the program. Next slide, please. So like I said, it's a 3-phase program. Phase 1 is seen as a feasibility study, proof of concept stage. Typically that you can get up to $150,000 for 6 to 9 months for a phase 1 grant. Like I said, you really want to read, kind of going back to what previous panelists have talked about a little bit, you really want to read each solicitation carefully, because some agencies, even within Department of Defense, the Army might have a $70,000 phase 1, whereas the Navy has a $100,000. So you really have to pay attention to differences and read the requirements of each proposal. And they actually have a pre-screen where anywhere from, I've heard numbers from 10 to 20% of phase 1 proposals actually never get reviewed because they have font size too big or margins too small or too big, just pre-screened right off the top. So you really want to make sure that you look at that carefully. From the Department of Defense website, you can see about 15% historically Department of Defense phase 1s have been awarded. I've heard that go from 10% to 20% depending on the year. But that's feasibility study, proof of concept. You're saying what you're going to be doing research on that's innovative and what that's going to look like at the end, what you're trying to prove. The phase 2 is for more of a full research and development effort, so more of getting a final prototype together. That's a 2-year, up to $1 million award. And traditionally it's been you had to win a phase 1 and then be invited to apply for a phase 2. You couldn't jump straight to a phase 2. So the competition, there's a lot more competition, but there was a much higher award percent. You can see DoD 50% for those phase 2s. And there was a reauthorization, so there are some changes in this a little bit, but I'm waiting to see how it plays out because in December they changed some of the laws around SBIRs. So we'll see. So a couple agencies allow you to jump straight to a phase 2, but that's just a pilot program for a couple of years, and we'll see how that works out for this first year. Phase 3, there's generally not any federal money for the phase 3. That's commercialization. You finish the phase 1, you finish the phase 2, you're ready to try and take it to market and find extra, whether private investment from VCs, angels, or from other government sources of funding. But there's no government funding for phase 3 traditionally for SBIRs. So that's kind of where you go off on your own, but that's really how the programs are judged a lot of times, is how well the companies that go through can commercialize their research. Next slide, please. So if we go on, the requirements for the small business are pretty close, or basically what the SBA qualifies as a small business. 500 or less employees, a for-profit entity. Doesn't mean you have to be profitable, but you have to be for profit. And the principal investigator on the grant needs to be primarily employed by the small business. So you can't apply this. So that requirement is specifically for SBIR, and that's where STTR kind of varies, and I'll talk about that next. But the PI on SBIR needs to be primarily employed by the small business. That means about 51% of their time and effort into the business. It doesn't have to be like that when you write a grant or when it's being reviewed. But at the time an award is made, if you have another job and you're just trying to start a small business on the side to do research, that's the point where you need to be primarily employed by that company, by the one you started and the one you won the grant for. And again, 51% owned by U.S. citizens, permanent residents. Next slide, please. So this shows the major.
Can I ask you that? I don't need to know a little time. Apparently there's a webinar that follows this.
Okay. Okay, I'll go really quick. So biggest difference between SBIR and STTR. SBIR is you're allowed to have a subcontractor. That can be a university, larger company. With STTRs, it's required. So you can see the percentage differences up there, and we can also talk about more of that later. SBIR is by far the bigger program. There's a lot more awards, a lot more dollar amounts going towards SBIRs than STTRs. Next slide. This is a list of the 11 agencies and how many awards and the dollar amount for 2010 and what they awarded. So you can see there's a lot more awards in phase 1, a lot more funding, a lot more bigger dollar amount in phase 2. That's really the sweet spot. That's what the agencies are really looking for. That's where a lot of the real innovation comes out. Next slide. There's a couple sources to find the topics and see what solicitations are open right now. Zin.com is not a government site. It's privately organized. They maintain a list of all the SBIR solicitations out and past solicitations. SBIR.gov, you can actually, both of these you can do a keyword search for open solicitations, but you really need to go to the agency websites, download the full solicitations, and read them because you might miss something if you just rely on the keyword searches. Next slide. Just to give you a sense of what's open right now, there's actually 4. I left off the National Institute of Health, but there's the Department of Defense STTR that's open through March 28th. You only have until February 27th to actually contact program managers for that. You have NIST, Department of Commerce, and Department of Education are the ones that are open right now. Just because if you're an energy company, it doesn't mean you have to wait for Department of Energy. Most agencies fund energy as a topic. It's very popular amongst all the SBIRs, so don't just focus on DOE. Go to NASA, go to Department of Defense, and look at all the solicitations. Next slide. And this is the last one, just to give you a sense of the future announced solicitations. So all of the agencies will have SBIRs this year, but the only ones that have announced specific dates are Department of Transportation and a couple of Department of Defense.
Thank you.
Good morning. I've been asked to talk about wider opportunities for grant participation through federal discretionary programs. And to kind of piggyback, could we move on to the next slide, please? Kind of piggyback onto the SBIR program. I work primarily with nonprofit organizations, but as we work with them on large federal projects, we find that there are a lot of contracting opportunities for for-profits. So as we talk about this, could I see quickly who here is from a for-profit or a small business? And who here is from a nonprofit organization? Anybody here worked with grant projects before? Okay, so you can kind of echo what I'm talking about as you discuss this through the day. Next slide, please. So here's some projects that I'm currently working with my clients. And why am I showing you this? Do you see any theme here? Do you see any pattern that's holding it together? There's not. There's no way that I could be a specialist in any of these, but you know what Robert Heinlein says about specialization, right? It's for insects. Nimble organizations and nimble for-profit businesses are going to, as they start to explore grant funding opportunities, are going to look, as Jack said, beyond DOE. There's lots of pockets of money kind of hidden all through the federal government for discretionary programs. There's lots of opportunities to partner. Skillful organizations that are participating in grant-funded programs have learned to kind of spin that crystal of funding and find what facet you can click onto. What a coincidence. That's what we do. That's what you guys are looking for. That's what we do. So if I'm going to try to leave you with one message today. I know I have a very brief amount of time. Learn to think creatively. Think outside of your comfort zone as far as what your organization does, what you're good at. Next. Ooh. So particularly when you're looking to participate in federal discretionary programs, think about how your company or your organization activities connect with the environment, connect with education, connect with workforce issues, and connect with social issues. There are programs such as Head Start. There are programs such as the EDA. In fact, we just finished working on the Clean Energy Jobs Accelerator project, and that was an opportunity for-profit organizations and other community organizations to click onto Brevard Workforce to find ways to participate in that funding. We're doing a similar project right now on workforce innovation, where we'll be looking for partners to help address concerns of long-term unemployed, concerns of returning veterans, and how they can get back into employment. There are, the key right now is STEM. Every grant opportunity I've been looking at almost is talking about STEM. And as I was thinking about this audience and this community, there's plenty of opportunities for you guys to participate in that. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Education grants are focusing on that. And they're going to be looking for internship opportunities. They're going to be looking for curriculum opportunities. If you think back over the funding environment over the last administration, Early Reading First was an opportunity, and it drew for-profits from all across the spectrum. How can we participate in a program that's designed to help children learn early reading skills? And so there were companies that developed curricula. The Leapfrog Corporation kind of blossomed under Early Reading First. Yeah, they were making little toy computers, and all of a sudden every classroom had to have one. So if I were a for-profit looking to participate in federal funding opportunities, I would be haunting those websites, trying to think outside the box, looking for ways that I could provide services that were going to be necessary to implement these federal projects. If I was a nonprofit corporation looking to expand the focus beyond what I do, and every nonprofit should try to be that nimble, I would be looking outside my comfort zone. If I'm an environmental organization, I would be looking at clean energy. If I were an early childhood or an education organization, I would be looking at ways to partner with science and industry on STEM. So again, my message to you today is think beyond what you think is the exact grant opportunity for you. I'd really like to echo what Tony said. I serve as a federal grant reviewer in Washington 68 weeks every summer, and I can't tell you how many grants get thrown out because they did not read the RFP. If you can bake oatmeal cookies, you can write a fundable grant, but you have to follow the recipe. And if the recipe says you only get 75 pages, people, they're serious. When we're up there in Washington reviewing these grants, we get to page 74, 75, we're in the middle of the budget, we're excited about this project, we want to fund it, and we get a green sheet of paper that said they went over, we threw it out. So if you just follow the recipe, you'll get funded. And grant writing is a whole separate session. But there are opportunities out there for almost any organization to participate in federal funding. Just learn to be really creative in how you think. Learn to partner. The theme this morning was boundary jumping, and that's absolutely the case for federal funding. If you become comfortable with jumping boundaries, you'll find an opportunity somewhere in the federal system.
Thank you. We're going to conclude in about 30 seconds. Instead of taking questions, I'm going to ask the panel to join me out in the foyer. If you've got questions for them, please come join us. I too want to drive home this one notion. I used to have a plaque on my wall that said, read the contract. I will tell you, you can fill in the blank. Read the RFP, read the grant application, read the contract, they all apply. And there's a trend that I see coming that you should be disturbed about. It's a federal contract type called LPTA, which stands for lowest price technically acceptable. Traditionally, the government has bought commodities that way, where there's very low risk to them and very low risk to the consumer. I have just seen a major new contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars that's being bought under lowest price technically acceptable. That means there is no best value, there is no scoring, it's awarded without discussion. You do not get a chance to go back and correct any deficiencies that the SSEB uncovered, and you do not get to change your price. So if you only take away one message from the day, it's go read whether it's RFP, contract, grant application, but please take that one home with you. And join me in a round of thanks for our panel, please.